How much does the heart weigh?
In an infant, the heart is about 1/30th of total body weight. In an average adult, the heart is about 1/300th of total body weight. This equals about 11 ounces, 310 grams, in males and 8 ounces, 225 grams, in females.
How deep is the ocean?
The average depth of the ocean floor is 13,124 feet, 4,000 meters. There are great variations in depth because the ocean floor is often very rugged. The greatest depth variations occur in deep, narrow depressions known as trenches along the margins of the continental plates. The deepest measurements made 36,198 feet, 11,034 meters. Deeper than the height of the world's tallest mountains were taken in Mariana Trench east of the Mariana Islands. In January 1960, the French oceanographer Jacques Picard, 1922–2008. Together with the U.S. Navy Lieutenant David Walsh, took the bathyscaphe Trieste to the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
How does a solar cell generate electricity?
A solar cell, also called a photovoltaic (PV) cell, consists of several layers of silicon-based material. When photons, particles of solar energy from sunlight, strike a photovoltaic cell, they are reflected, pass through, or are absorbed. Absorbed photons provide energy to generate electricity. The top P layer absorbs light energy. This energy frees electrons at the junction layer between the P layer and the N layer. The freed electrons collect at the bottom N layer. The loss of electrons from the top layer produces holes in the layer that are then filled by other electrons. When a connection, or circuit, is completed between the P layer and N layer, the flow of electrons creates an electric current. The photovoltaic effect, including the naming of the P layer and N layer, was discovered by Russell Ohl, 1898–1987, a researcher at Bell Labs, in 1940.
Why does the actual amount of computer storage space differ from the advertised amount of storage?
Computer storage space for hard drives and other storage media is calculated in base 2 using binary format with a byte as the basic unit. The common units of computer storage are kilobyte, KB, 024 bytes megabyte, MB. 1024 kilobytes or 1,048,576 bytes gigabyte, GB, 024 megabytes or 1,073,741,824 bytes terabyte. TB 024 gigabytes or 1,099,511,627,776 bytes. However, since consumers are more familiar with the decimal base 10 system of numbers, computer manufacturers describe storage sizes in base 10, where 1 megabyte is 1 million bytes and 1 gigabyte is 1 billion bytes. Therefore, for each gigabyte they are over-reporting storage space by 73,741,824 bytes. The concept is further complicated because some storage media may have the actual amount of advertised storage, but some of the available storage is lost due to formatting.
What is magnetic declination?
It is the angle between magnetic north and true north at a given point on Earth's surface. It varies at different points on Earth's surface and at different times of the year.
How many genes are in a typical bacterial cell?
The bacterium Escherichia coli has about 5,000 genes.
Where is the world's deepest lake?
Lake Baikal, located in southeast Siberia, Russia, is approximately 5,371 feet, 1,638 meters deep at its maximum depth, Okhon Crevice, making it the deepest lake in the world. Lake Tanganyika in Tanzania and Zaire is the second deepest lake, with a depth of 4,708 feet, 1,435 meters.
Which structures and organs constitute the cardiovascular system?
Technically speaking, the structures of the cardiovascular system are the heart and blood vessels. Blood, a connective tissue, plays a major role in the cardiovascular system, and is usually discussed within the context of the cardiovascular system.
What are truffles?
Truffles, a delight of gourmets, are arguably the most prized edible fungi, found mainly in Western Europe. They grow near the roots of trees, particularly oak, but also chestnut, hazel, and beech, in open woodlands. Unlike typical mushrooms, truffles develop 3 to 12 inches. 7.6 to 30.5 centimeters, underground, making them difficult to find. Truffle hunters use specially trained dogs and pigs to find the flavorful morsels. Both animals have a keen sense of smell and are attracted by the strong, nut-like aroma of truffles. In fact, trained pigs are able to pick up the scented truffle from 20 feet, 6.1 meters, away. After catching a whiff of a truffle scent, the animals rush to the origin of the aroma and quickly root out the precious prize. Once the truffle is found, the truffle hunter, referred to in French as trufficulteur, carefully scrapes back the earth to reveal the fungus. Truffles should not be touched by human skin, as doing so can cause the fungus to rot.
What is a hacker?
A hacker is a skilled computer user. The term originally denoted a skilled programmer. 5. Particularly one skilled in machine code and with a good knowledge of the machine and its operating system. The name arose from the fact that a good programmer could always hack an unsatisfactory system around until it worked. The term later came to denote a user whose main interest is in defeating secure systems. The term has thus acquired a pejorative sense, with the meaning of one who deliberately and sometimes criminally interferes with data available through telephone lines. The activities of such hackers have led to considerable efforts to tighten security of transmitted data. The hacker ethic is that information sharing is the proper way of human dealing, and, indeed, it is the responsibility of hackers to liberally impart their wisdom to the software world by distributing information. Many hackers are hired by companies to test their web security.
How does a homing pigeon find its way home?
Scientists currently have two hypotheses to explain the homing flight of pigeons. Neither has been proved to the satisfaction of all the experts. The first hypothesis involves an odor map. This theory proposes that young pigeons learn how to return to their original point of departure by smelling different odors that reach their home in the winds from varying directions. They would, for example, learn that a certain odor is carried on winds blowing from the east. If a pigeon were transported eastward, the odor would tell it to fly westward to return home. The second hypothesis proposes that a bird may be able to extract its home's latitude and longitude from Earth's magnetic field. It may be proven in the future that neither theory explains the pigeon's navigational abilities or that some synthesis of the two theories is plausible.
Which tree that is native to the United States almost became extinct due to fungus?
The American chestnut, Castanea dentata, was widespread across eastern North America until the early 1900s. It was one of the most important trees of the eastern hardwood forest and made up almost half of the population of trees in central and southern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and southern New England. In its entire range, the species dominated the deciduous forests, making up almost 1/4 of the trees. The fungus Cryphonectria parasitica, commonly known as the chestnut blight, caused the near extinction of the American chestnut tree in North America. Through ongoing genetic studies and improvements in plant breeding techniques, the American Chestnut Foundation is working to restore this tree to its native range within the woodlands of the eastern United States.
Why are horsetails called scouring rushes?
The epidermal tissue of horsetails contains abrasive particles of silica. Scouring rushes were used by Native Americans to polish bows and arrows. Early North American settlers, who cleaned their pots and pans along stream banks, used horsetails found in abundance in such areas to scrub out their dishes.
When and by whom were clouds first classified?
The French naturalist Jean Lamarck, 1744–1829, proposed the first system for classifying clouds in 1802. His work, however, did not receive wide acclaim. A year later the Englishman Luke Howard, 1772–1864, developed a cloud classification system that has been generally accepted and is still used today. Clouds are distinguished by their general appearance. Heap clouds and layer clouds, and by their height above the ground. Latin names and prefixes are used to describe these characteristics. The shape names are cirrus, curly or fibrous, stratus, layered, and cumulus, lumpy or piled. The prefixes denoting height are CO, high clouds with bases above 20,000 feet 6,096 meters. And alto, mid-level clouds from 6,500 to 20,000 feet 2,000 to 6,096 meters. There is no prefix for low clouds. Nimbo or nimbus is also added as a name or prefix to indicate that the cloud produces precipitation.
What is acid rain?
Acid deposition is the fallout of acidic compounds in solid, liquid, or gaseous forms. Wet deposition occurs as precipitation while dry deposition is the fallout of particulate matter. Acid rain is the best known form of acid deposition. The term acid rain was coined by British chemist Robert Angus Smith, 1817–1884, who, in 1872, published Air and Rain, The Beginnings of a Chemical Climatology. Since then, acid rain has become an increasingly used term for rain, snow, sleet, or other precipitation that has been polluted by acids such as sulfuric and nitric acids. When gasoline, coal, or oil are burned, their waste products of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide combine in complex chemical reactions with water vapor in clouds to form acids. The United States alone discharges 40 million metric tons of sulfur and nitrogen oxides into the atmosphere. This, combined with natural emissions of sulfur and nitrogen compounds, has resulted in severe ecological damage. Hundreds of lakes in North America, especially northeastern Canada and United States, and in Scandinavia are so acidic that they cannot support fish life. Crops, forests, and building materials, such as marble, limestone, sandstone, and bronze, have been affected as well, but the extent is not as well documented. However, in Europe, where so many living trees are stunted or killed, the new word Waldsterben, forest death, has been coined to describe this new phenomenon. In 1990, amendments to the U.S. Clean Air Act contained provisions to control emissions that cause acid rain. It included the reductions of sulfur dioxide emissions from 19 million tons to 9.1 million tons annually, and the reduction of industrial nitrogen oxide emissions from 6 to 4 million tons annually.
Is ozone beneficial or harmful to life on Earth?
Ozone, a form of oxygen with 3 atoms instead of the normal 2, is highly toxic. Less than 1 part per million of this blue-tinged gas is poisonous to humans. In Earth's upper atmosphere, stratosphere, it is a major factor in making life on Earth possible. About 90% of the planet's ozone is in the ozone layer. The ozone belt shields the Earth from and filters the excessive ultraviolet, UV, radiation generated by the sun. Scientists predict that a diminished or depleted ozone layer could lead to increased health problems for humans, such as skin cancer, cataracts, and weakened immune systems. Increased UV can also lead to reduced crop yields and disruption of aquatic ecosystems, including the marine food chain. While beneficial in the stratosphere, near ground level it is a pollutant that helps form photochemical smog and acid rain.
Why does the risk of cancer diminish rapidly after one quits the cigarette smoking habit?
Exposure of a premalignant cell to a promoter converts the cell to an irreversibly malignant state. Promotion is a slow process, and exposure to the promoter must be sustained for a certain period of time. This requirement explains why the risk of cancer diminishes rapidly after one quits smoking. Both cancer initiators and promoters appear to be contained in tobacco smoke.
Who was the first woman to receive the Nobel Prize?
Marie Curie was the first woman to receive the Nobel Prize. She received the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1903 for her work on radioactivity in collaboration with her husband, Pierre Curie, 1859 to 1906, and A. H. Becquerel, 1852 to 1908. The 1903 prize in physics was shared by all 3 individuals. Marie Curie was also the first person to be awarded 2 Nobel Prizes and is one of Only 2 individuals who have been awarded a Nobel Prize in 2 different fields.
Can meningitis be prevented?
The introduction and widespread use of Haemophilus influenza type B and Streptococcus pneumoniae. Conjugated vaccines has dramatically reduced the incidence of meningitis caused by these bacteria. In 2005, the Centers for Disease Control recommended routine vaccination of adolescents and college freshmen with the new meningococcal vaccine, which prevents 4 types of meningococcal disease caused by the bacteria Neisseria meningitidis.
Who invented bifocal lenses?
The original bifocal lens was invented in 1784 by Benjamin Franklin, 1706–1790. At that time, the 2 lenses were joined in a metallic frame. In 1899, J. L. Borch welded the 2 lenses together. 1-part bifocal lenses were developed in 1910 by researchers at the Carl Zeiss Company.
Which pollutants lead to indoor air pollution?
Indoor air pollution, also known as sick building syndrome, results from conditions in modern, high-energy efficiency buildings that have reduced outside air exchange, or have inadequate ventilation, chemical contamination, and microbial contamination. Indoor air pollution can produce various symptoms, such as headache, nausea, and eye, nose, and throat irritation. In addition, houses are affected by indoor air pollution emanating from consumer and building products and from tobacco smoke.
What is farsightedness?
Farsightedness, or hyperopia, is the ability to see distant objects but not close ones. It is a disorder in which the focal point is too far from the lens, and the image is focused behind the retina when looking at a close object. In this condition, the lens must thicken to bring somewhat distant objects into focus. Farsightedness is corrected by a convex lens that causes light rays to converge as they approach the eye to focus on the retina. Farsightedness is less common than nearsightedness, affecting only 5 to 10% of Americans.
Why is acid-free paper important?
Acid-free paper is important for the preservation of printed materials on paper. Acidic papers deteriorate quickly. Papers treated with an alkaline reserve, most frequently chalk, neutralizes the acids, extending the lifespan of the paper.
What is the Fujita and Pearson tornado scale?
The Fujita and Pearson tornado scale was developed in 1971 by University of Chicago professor T. Theodore Fujita, 1920 to 1998, and Alan Pearson, 1925. Who was then the director of the National Severe Storms Forecast Center. It ranked tornadoes by their wind speed, path, length, and width. Tornadoes are not assessed based on actual wind speed and damage, but rather the scale determines wind speed based on damage. Sometimes known simply as the Fujita scale, the rankings ranged from F0, very weak, to F6, inconceivable. F0 light damage, damage to trees, billboards, and chimneys. F1 moderate damage, mobile homes pushed off their foundations and cars pushed off roads. F2 considerable damage, roofs torn off, mobile homes demolished, and large trees uprooted. F3 severe damage, even well-constructed homes torn apart, trees uprooted, and cars lifted off the ground. F4 devastating damage, houses leveled, cars thrown, and objects become flying missiles. F5 incredible damage, structures lifted off foundations and carried away, cars become missiles. Less than 2% of tornadoes are in this category. F6 and F6 tornado has never been recorded, but we surmise the damage would be devastating.
What was the first mathematical society organized in the United States?
The first mathematical society in the United States was the American Mathematical Society, founded in 1888 to further the interests of mathematics research and scholarship. The first president was John Howard Van Amringe, 1835 to 1915.
How does blood alcohol level affect the body and behavior?
The effects of drinking alcoholic beverages depend on body weight and the amount of actual ethyl alcohol consumed. The level of alcohol in the blood is calculated in milligrams. 1 milligram equals 0.035 ounce. Of pure, ethyl, alcohol per deciliter, 3.5 fluid ounces, commonly expressed in percentages.
What is the difference between the degrees Doctor of Dental Surgery, DDS, and Doctor of Medical Dentistry, DMD?
The title depends entirely on the school's preference in terminology. The degrees are equivalent.
When do most tornadoes happen?
Tornadoes can happen at any time of the year and at any time during the day or night. Tornadoes are most likely to happen in the United States during March through August. There is a general northward shift in the tornado season from late winter through midsummer. Regionally, tornado activity increases in the central Gulf Coast as early as February. Then shifts to the southeastern Atlantic states in March and April before moving to the southern plains in May and early June. The greatest amount of tornado activity is in June and July in the northern plains and upper Midwest. Statistically, most tornadoes strike between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m.
Why are eye transplants not available?
The eye's retina is part of the brain, and the retina cells are derived from the optic nerve in the brain. Retinal cells and the cells that connect them to the brain are the least amenable to being manipulated outside the body. Implantable cardioverter defibrillator monitors heart rhythms. When it senses irregular rhythms, it delivers shocks so the heart beats in a regular rhythm.
What is pitch blend?
Pitchblende is a massive variety of uraninite, or uranium oxide, found in metallic veins. It is a radioactive material and the most important ore of uranium. In 1898, Marie, 1867–1934, and Pierre, 1859–1906, Curie discovered that pitchblende contained radium, a rare element that has since been used in medicine and the sciences.
What are the Van Allen belts?
The Van Allen belts, or zones, are two regions of highly charged particles above Earth's equator trapped by the magnetic field that surrounds Earth. Also called the magnetosphere, the first belt extends from a few hundred to about 2,000 miles, 3,200 kilometers, above Earth's surface, and the second is between 9,000 and 12,000 miles, 14,500 to 19,000 kilometers. The particles, mainly protons and electrons, come from the solar wind and cosmic rays. The belts are named in honor of James Van Allen, 1914–2006. The American physicist who discovered them in 1958 and 1959 with the aid of radiation counters. Carried aboard the artificial satellites Explorer I, 1958, and Pioneer 3, 1959. In May 1998 there were a series of large, solar disturbances that caused a new Van Allen belt to form in the so-called slot region between the inner and outer Van Allen belts. The new belt eventually disappeared once the solar activity subsided. There were also a number of satellite upsets around the same time involving the Galaxy 4 satellite, Iridium satellites, and others. This is not the first time that a temporary new belt has been observed to form in the same region. but it takes a prolonged period of solar storm activity to populate this region with particles.
What is pharmacognosy?
It is the science of natural drugs and their physical, botanical, and chemical properties. Natural products derived from plant, vegetable, animal, and mineral sources have been a part of medical practice for thousands of years. Today about 25% of all prescriptions dispensed in pharmacies contain active ingredients that are extracted from higher plants, and many more are found in over-the-counter products.
Who introduced the gypsy moth into the United States?
In 1869, Professor Leopold Trevellet. 1827 to 1895, brought gypsy moth egg masses from France to Medford, Massachusetts. His intention was to breed the gypsy moth, Portheitria dispar, with the silkworm to overcome a wilt disease of the silkworm. He placed the egg masses on a window ledge, and evidently the wind blew them away. About 10 years later these caterpillars were numerous on trees in that vicinity. And in 20 years, trees in eastern Massachusetts were being defoliated. In 1911, a contaminated plant shipment from Holland also introduced the gypsy moth to Massachusetts. Gypsy moths are now found throughout the entire northeastern United States and portions of Virginia, North Carolina, Ohio, and Michigan. The gypsy moth lays its eggs on the leaves of oaks, birches, maples, and other hardwood trees. When the yellow hairy caterpillars hatch from the eggs, they devour the leaves in such quantities that the tree becomes temporarily defoliated. Sometimes this causes the tree to die. The caterpillars grow from 0.5 inch, 3 millimeters, to about 2 inches, 5.1 centimeters. Before they spin a pupa, in which they will metamorphose into adult moths.
What is the one gene one enzyme hypothesis?
In the 1930s, George Beadle, 1903 to 1989, and Boris F. Russey, 1901 to 1979, theorized that the variety of fruit fly mutations might be due to mutations of individual genes that code for each of the enzymes involved in a given pathway. Subsequently, Beadle and Edward Tatum, 1909 to 1975, performed a series of experiments with the orange bread mold Neurospora that elucidated the enzymatic pathway required by the fungus to produce a specific nutritional requirement, arginine. The researchers were able to create a series of mutants, each lacking in a different enzyme in the pathway. In this way they were able to piece together the sequence of events required for the production of arginine and thereby show where each mutant fit. The work of Beadle and Tatum provided important support for the one gene one enzyme hypothesis, which holds that the function of a gene is to produce a specific enzyme. Their work garnered a Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1958.
Who discovered jumping genes?
Barbara McClintock, 1902 to 1992, who worked on the cytogenetics of maize during the 1950s at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory in New York, discovered that certain mutable genes were transferred from cell to cell during development of the corn kernel. McClintock made this inference based on observations of changing patterns of coloration in maize kernels over many generations of controlled crosses. She was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1983 for her work.
What is the purpose of goosebumps?
The puckering of the skin that takes place when goose flesh is formed is the result of contraction of the muscle fibers in the skin. This muscular activity will produce more heat, and raises the temperature of the body.
What causes formaldehyde contamination in homes?
Formaldehyde contamination is related to the widespread construction use of wood products bonded with urea formaldehyde resins and products containing formaldehyde. Major formaldehyde sources include subflooring of particle board, wall paneling made from hardwood plywood or particle board, and cabinets and furniture made from particle board. Medium-density fiberboard, hardwood plywood, or solid wood. Urea formaldehyde foam insulation, UFFI, has received the most media notoriety and regulatory attention. Formaldehyde is also used in drapes, upholstery, carpeting, wallpaper adhesives, milk cartons, car bodies, household disinfectants, permanent press clothing, and paper towels. In particular, mobile homes seem to have higher formaldehyde levels than other houses. The release of formaldehyde into the air by these products, called outgassing, can develop poisoning symptoms in humans. The EPA classifies formaldehyde as a potential human carcinogen, cancer-causing agent.
The 3 steps are: collection and processing of recyclable materials, use of recyclables by industry to manufacture new products, consumer purchase of products made from recycled materials. What is the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act?
In 1976, the U.S. Congress passed the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, RCRA, which was amended in 1984 and 1986. This law requires the EPA to identify hazardous wastes and set standards for their management, including generation, transportation, treatment, storage, and disposal of hazardous waste. The law requires all firms that store, treat, or dispose of more than 220 pounds, 100 kilograms, of hazardous wastes per month to have a permit stating how such wastes are managed.
Yuck, the symbol for dangerous or poisonous products, developed.
The Pittsburgh Poison Center developed the Mr. Yuck symbol in 1971. The depiction of a green, gagging face with an extended tongue is used by Children's Hospital to promote prevention education through affiliated hospitals and poison centers. In the testing program, children at daycare centers selected Mr. Yuck as the symbol that represented the most unappealing product. Among the other symbols used were a red stop sign and a skull and crossbones. Interestingly, the children found the skull and crossbones the most appealing symbol.
What are the major parts of the urinary system?
The major parts of the urinary system are the kidneys, the urinary bladder, two ureters, and the urethra. Each component of the urinary system has a unique function. Urine is manufactured in the kidneys. The urinary bladder serves as a temporary storage reservoir for urine. The ureters transport urine from the kidney to the bladder, while the urethra transports urine from the bladder to the outside of the body.
What are isomers?
Isomers are compounds with the same molecular formula but different structures due to the different arrangement of the atoms within the molecules. Structural isomers have atoms connected in different ways. Geometric isomers differ in their symmetry about a double bond. Optical isomers are mirror images of each other.
Who coined the term homeostasis?
Walter Bradford Cannon, 1871–1945, who elaborated on Claude Bernard's concept of the milieu intérieur. Interior environment, used the term homeostasis to describe the body's ability to maintain a relative constancy in its internal environment.
Where is the oldest operational nuclear power plant in the United States?
The oldest operational plant in the United States is the Oyster Creek, New Jersey, plant. It became operational on December 1, 1969. The original license for the Oyster Creek power plant was scheduled to expire on April 9, 2009. On April 8, 2009, the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission approved a 20-year license extension until April 9, 2029. The 9 Mile Point Unit 1 also became operational on December 1, 1969. Its original license was to expire on August 22, 2009. But on October 31, 2006, the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission granted a 20-year extension to its license, extending it to August 22, 2029. Since the license for Oyster Creek was issued before the license for 9 Mile Point, Oyster Creek is officially the oldest operating U.S. reactor.
When and where was gunpowder invented?
The explosive mixture of saltpeter, potassium nitrate, sulfur, and charcoal called gunpowder was known in China at least by 850 CE, and probably was discovered by Chinese alchemists searching for components to make artificial gold. Early mixtures had too little saltpeter, 50%. To be truly explosive, 75% minimum is needed to get a detonation. The first use of the mixture was in making fireworks. Later, the Chinese used it in incendiary-like weapons. Eventually it is thought that the Chinese found the correct proportions to utilize its explosive effects in rockets and bamboo bullets. However, some authorities still maintain that the Chinese gunpowder really had only pyrotechnic qualities, and true gunpowder was a European invention. Roger Bacon, 1214 to 1292, had a formula for it, and so might have the German monk Berthold Schwarz, who is believed to have lived in the 14th century. The year 1353 is often given as the date of his invention of gunpowder. Its first European use depended on the development of firearms in the 14th century. Not until the 17th century was gunpowder used in peacetime, for mining and civil engineering applications.
Who was the first test tube baby?
Louise Brown, born on July 25, 1978. Is the first baby produced from fertilization done in vitro outside the mother's body. Patrick Steptoe, 1913 to 1988, was the obstetrician, and Robert Edwards, 1939. The biologist who designed the method for in vitro fertilization and early embryo development. In vitro fertilization occurs in a glass dish, not a test tube, where eggs from the mother's ovary are combined with the father's sperm, in a salt solution. Fertilization should occur within 24 hours, and when cell division begins, these fertilized eggs are placed in the mother's womb, or possibly another woman's womb.
What is the shape of a raindrop?
Although a raindrop has been illustrated as being pear-shaped or tear-shaped. High-speed photographs reveal that a large raindrop has a spherical shape with a hole not quite through it, giving it a donut-like appearance. Water surface tension pulls the drop into this shape. As a drop larger than 0.08 inch, 2 mm, in diameter falls, it will become distorted. Air pressure flattens its bottom and its sides bulge. If it becomes larger than 0.25 inch, 6.4 mm, across, it will keep spreading crosswise as it falls and will bulge more at its sides, while at the same time, its middle will thin into a bow tie shape. Eventually, in its path downward, it will divide into two smaller spherical drops.
What is the float glass process?
Manufacture of high-quality flat glass, needed for large areas and industrial uses. Depends on the float glass process, invented by Alastair Pilkington, 1920 to 1995, in 1952. The float process departs from all other glass processes where the molten glass flows from the melting chamber into the float chamber, which is a molten tin pool approximately 160 feet, 49 meters, long and 12 feet, 3.5 meters, wide. During its passage over this molten tin, the hot glass assumes the perfect flatness of the tin surface and develops excellent thickness uniformity. The finished product is as flat and smooth as plate glass without having been ground and polished.
What is the client/server principle and how does it apply to the Internet?
The client/server principle refers to the two components of a centralized computer network: client and server machines. Clients request information and servers send them the requested information. For example, when an individual uses his computer to look at a web page, his computer acts as the client, and the computer hosting the web page is the server. Browsers enable the connection between clients and servers. During the 1990s, Netscape, an outgrowth of the early browser Mosaic, and Internet Explorer were the dominant browsers. Eventually, Microsoft's Internet Explorer became the dominant browser. Other frequently used browsers are Mozilla Firefox and Safari.
What are the uses of peat moss?
Peat moss, genus Sphagnum, grows mostly in bogs. Peat mosses are favored by gardeners for their ability to increase the water-holding capacity of soils. Due to large, dead cells in their leaf-like parts, they are able to absorb 5 times as much water as cotton plants. Peat mosses are also used as damp cushions by florists to keep other plants and flowers damp. Species of sphagnum also have medicinal purposes. Certain Aboriginal people use peat mosses as disinfectants and, due to their absorbency, as diapers. Peat moss is acidic and is an ideal dressing for wounds. During World War I, the British used more than 1 million wound dressings made of peat moss. Native North Americans used species of the genera Neem and Bryum to treat burns. In Europe, species of the genus Dichronoesia have been used to waterproof roofs.
How do plants obtain nitrogen?
The primary way that plants obtain nitrogen compounds is via the nitrogen cycle, which is a series of reactions involving several different types of bacteria, including nitrogen-fixing bacteria and denitrifying bacteria. During nitrogen fixation, symbiotic bacteria, which live in association with the roots of legumes, are able through a series of enzymatic reactions to make nitrogen available for plants. Nitrogen is crucial to all organisms because it is an integral element of proteins and nucleic acids. Although Earth's atmosphere is 79% nitrogen, molecular nitrogen is very stable and does not easily combine with other elements. Plants must use nitrogen in its fixed form, such as ammonia, urea, or the nitrate ion.
How many distinct regions are in the large intestine?
The large intestine is mostly a storage site for undigested materials until they are eliminated from the body via defecation. It consists of 3 distinct regions: 1, the cecum, 2, the colon, and 3, the rectum. The cecum is the first section of the large intestine below the ileocecal valve. The appendix is attached to the cecum. Since the colon, ascending, transverse, descending, and sigmoid colon, is the largest region of the large intestine, the term colon is often applied to the entire large intestine. The rectum, anal canal, and anus is the final region of the large intestine and the end of the digestive tract. Although most absorption has occurred in the small intestine, water and electrolytes are still absorbed through the large intestine.
Who developed the poliomyelitis vaccine for polio?
Immunologist Jonasi. Salk, 1914 to 1995, developed the first vaccine, made from a killed virus, against poliomyelitis and is known as the man who defeated polio. In 1952 he prepared and tested the vaccine, and in 1954 massive field tests were successfully undertaken. 2 years later immunologist Albert Sabin, 1906 to 1993, developed an oral vaccine made from inactivated live viruses of 3 polio strains. Currently, an inactivated polio vaccine, IPV, is given as an injection at ages 2 months, 4 months, 6 to 18 months, and a booster at 4 to 6 years.
Is there a quick and easy way to test for soil acidity or alkalinity?
Some gardeners make a simple taste and smell test to check the soil. Acid soil smells and tastes sour. Some put a soil sample in a jar of vinegar. If the vinegar starts to bubble, your soil has plenty of lime. If there are no bubbles, lime the soil with 4 ounces. 113 grams of lime for every square yard, 0.84 square meter.
What was the first commercial use of genetic engineering?
Recombinant DNA technology was first used commercially to produce human insulin from bacteria. In 1982, genetically engineered insulin was approved for use by diabetics. Insulin is normally produced by the pancreas, and the pancreas of slaughtered animals such as swine or sheep was used as a source of insulin. To provide a reliable source of human insulin, researchers obtained DNA from human cells carrying the gene with the information for making human insulin. Researchers made a copy of DNA carrying this insulin gene and moved it into a bacterium. When the bacterium was grown in the lab, the microbe split from one cell into 2 cells. And both cells got a copy of the insulin gene. Those 2 microbes grew, then divided into 4. Those 4 into 8, the 8 into 16, and so forth. With each cell division, the 2 new cells each had a copy of the gene for human insulin. And because the cells had a copy of the genetic recipe card for insulin, they could make the insulin protein.
What are the 4 major divisions of chemistry?
Chemistry has traditionally been divided into organic, inorganic, analytical, and physical chemistry. Organic chemistry is the study of compounds that contain carbon. More than 90% of all known chemicals are organic. Inorganic chemistry is the study of compounds of all elements except carbon. Analytical chemists determine the 7 structure and composition of compounds and mixtures. They also develop and operate instruments and techniques for carrying out the analyses. Physical chemists use the principles of physics to understand chemical phenomena.
How does a mastodon differ from a mammoth?
Although the words are sometimes used interchangeably, the mammoth and the mastodon were 2 different animals. The mastodon seems to have appeared first, while a side branch may have led to the mammoth. The mastodon lived in Africa, Europe, Asia, and North and South America. It appeared in the Oligocene epoch, 25 to 38 million years ago, and survived until less than 1 million years ago. It stood a maximum of 10 feet, 3 meters, tall and was covered with dense woolly hair. Its tusks were aligned straight forward and were nearly parallel to each other. The mammoth evolved less than 2 million years ago and died out about 10,000 years ago. It lived in North America, Europe, and Asia. Like the mastodon, the mammoth was covered with dense, woolly hair, with a long, coarse layer of outer hair to protect it from the cold. It was somewhat larger than the mastodon, standing 9 to 15 feet, 2.7 to 4.5 meters. The mammoth's tusks tended to spiral outward, then up. The gradual warming of Earth's climate and the change in environment were probably primary factors in the animal's extinction. Early man killed many of them as well, perhaps hastening the process.
Which U.S. astronauts spent time aboard Mir.
The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 allowed the United States and Russia to enter a new era of space collaboration. NASA made a financial commitment of $400 million to the Russian space program to continue the expeditions to the Mir space station. The Space Shuttle Atlantis was fitted with a special adapter to allow it to dock with Mir. There were 11 Space Shuttle flights to Mir between February 1994 and June 1998. In a new spirit of cooperation, Russian cosmonauts began to fly on the shuttle, while American astronauts began to spend time on Mir conducting experiments with their Russian counterparts. The experiences gained by the U.S. astronauts on Mir were beneficial in planning for the International Space Station. A total of 7 U.S. astronauts spent 980 cumulative days aboard Mir.
What is a black hole?
When a star with a mass greater than about 4 times that of the Sun collapses, even the neutrons cannot stop the force of gravity. There is nothing to stop the contraction, and the star collapses forever. The material is so dense that nothing, not even light, can escape. The American physicist John Wheeler, 1911 to 2008, gave this phenomenon the name black hole in 1967. Since no light escapes from a black hole, it cannot be observed directly. However, if a black hole existed near another star, it would draw matter from the other star into itself and, in effect, produce X-rays. In the constellation of Cygnus, there is a strong X-ray source named Cygnus X1. It is near a star, and the two revolve around each other. The unseen X-ray source has the gravitational pull of at least 10 suns and is believed to be a black hole. Another type of black hole, a primordial black hole, may also exist dating from the time of the Big Bang, when regions of gas and dust were highly compressed. Recently, astronomers observed a brief pulse of X-rays from Sagittarius A, a region near the center of the Milky Way galaxy. The origin of this pulse and its behavior led scientists to conclude that there is probably a black hole in the center of our galaxy. There are 4 other possible black holes. A Schwarzschild black hole has no charge and no angular momentum. A Reissner-Nordstrom black hole has charge but no angular momentum. A Kerr black hole has angular momentum but no charge, and a Kerr-Newman black hole has charge and angular momentum.
Who invented the cyclotron?
The cyclotron was invented by Ernest Lawrence, 1901 to 1958, at the University of California, Berkeley, in 1934, to study the nuclear structure of the atom. The cyclotron produced high-energy particles that were accelerated outwards in a spiral rather than through an extremely long, linear accelerator.
What groups of reptiles are living today?
The 3 orders of reptiles that are alive today are, 1. Chelonia, which includes turtles, terrapins, and tortoises. 2. Squamata, which includes lizards and snakes. And 3. Crocodilia, which includes crocodiles and alligators.
What is the difference between a hunter's moon and a harvest moon?
The harvest moon is the full moon nearest the autumnal equinox, on or about September 23. It is followed by a period of several successive days when the moon rises soon after sunset. In the southern hemisphere, the harvest moon is the full moon closest to the vernal equinox, on or about March 21. This gives farmers extra hours of light for harvesting crops. The next full moon after the harvest moon is called the hunter's moon.
How large is the brain?
The brain weighs about 3 pounds, 1.4 kilograms. The average brain has a volume of 71 cubic inches, 1,200 cubic centimeters. In general, the brain of males averages about 10% larger than those of females due to overall differences in average body size. The brain contains approximately 100 billion neurons and 1 trillion neuroglia. There is no correlation between brain size and intelligence.
Which lake is no longer one of the 5 largest lakes in the world?
The Aral Sea, located in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, was previously the 4th largest lake in the world with 26,000 square miles. 67,340 square kilometers, but is now the 6th largest lake in the world. It is now divided into 2 distinct lakes with a total area of only 13,000 square miles. 33,670 square kilometers, although the size varies with the seasons. One of the major reasons the lake has shrunk is the diversion of water for irrigation purposes. Lake Superior is the largest of the Great Lakes. The North American Great Lakes form a single watershed with one common outlet to the See the St. Lawrence Seaway. The total volume of all 5 basins is 6,000 trillion gallons. 22.7 trillion liters, equivalent to about 20% of the world's fresh water. Only Lake Michigan lies wholly within U.S. borders, the others share their boundaries with Canada. Some believe that Lake Huron and Lake Michigan are 2 lobes of one lake. Since they are the same elevation and are connected by the 120-foot, 36.5 meter deep Strait of Mackinac, which is 3.6 to 5 miles, 6 to 8 kilometers, wide. Gauge records indicate that they both have similar water level regimes and mean long-term behavior, so that hydrologically they act as one lake. Historically they were considered 2 by the explorers who named them. But this is considered a misnomer by some.
What is a pedigree?
A pedigree is a genetic history of a family, which shows the inheritance of traits through several generations. Information that can be obtained from a pedigree includes birth order, sex of children, twins, marriages, deaths, stillbirths, and pattern of inheritance of specific genetic traits.
What is a Leyden jar?
A Leyden jar, the earliest form of capacitor, is a device for storing an electrical charge. First described in 1745 by E. George van Kleist, c. 1700 to 1748. It was also used by Peter van Musschenbroek, 1692 to 1761, a professor of physics at the University of Leiden. The device came to be known as a Leyden jar and was the first device that could store large amounts of electric charge. The jars contained an inner wire electrode in contact with water, mercury, or wire. The outer electrode was a human hand holding the jar. An improved version coated the jar inside and outside with separate metal foils with the inner foil connected to a conducting rod and terminated in a conducting sphere. This eliminated the need for the liquid electrolyte. In use, the jar was normally charged from an electrostatic generator. The Leyden jar which makes the hair stand up is still used for classroom demonstrations of static electricity.